Fantastic. Well, let's get started because we're a few minutes in, and just welcome all along to this episode of Below the Fold. Just before we do get started, just for those of you who don't know, because I'm seeing some kind of new names and faces in the chat. My name is Harry Cobbold. I'm the founder of Unfold. We're an e-commerce specialist web development agency based in Bristol. We do sort of two core things. One is UX design, so trying to make software more intuitive and easy to use and easy to understand. And the second one is web development. So we make custom web applications and e-commerce stores using Laravel and WooCommerce. We work with all kinds of people, from storage through to plants and private chefs. So it's a real mixed bag, but all kind of growing, scaling businesses. So it's great to work with. In this series of events, we're inviting along an expert, and I'm reliably informed that Jon is an expert.
Terrible information you've got. Terrible information.
And just being a chance to kind of grill them on a specialist subject. So this week we are talking about SEO, and I'm going to be asking some questions, but equally want to hear what you want to know about SEO. So drop it into the chat as we go through, and I will try and thread them into the discussion. And if not, we'll pick everything up at the end. We'll talk for about 20-30 minutes, and then hopefully dive into some questions as well. But yeah, Jon, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Would you like to just kick off by telling everyone who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jon Payne. I am the co-founder of a digital marketing agency called Noisy Little Monkey. We started out as a pure SEO agency. And in the last 7-8 years, we've moved more into automation and into kind of creative services, where we're helping people create content for social media, for their website, for ads and all of that kind of stuff. Don't actually run any ads, but often neither do PPC agencies do creative. So we tend to help people with their creative on that stuff. Based in Bristol, been going 13 years. I try to do as little as possible, but unfortunately it seems to take me a remarkably long time. So I seem to be always here and never quite getting anything done.
Oh, well, welcome along. Looking forward to kind of diving in to find out a bit more about SEO. And actually, looking at the chat, it seems that we've got some newbies to SEO, which, to be fair, I am very much the same. So we can start from the top, because I think SEO can be a bit of a dark art. And I think it'd be great to just start with kind of what is it and what does it involve?
Right. Okay. That's a good question. It's a big topic, I guess. That's why I'm suddenly thinking, what is it? I think the reason I'm being a little bit vague is if you have a website that's been built by someone who cares about the speed of the website's ability to load on screen, and has thought about using a recognized structure in the way they've put the website together, and you've considered all of the content that you're going to put on that website and made it unique and useful to your audience and all of that kind of stuff. And as a result of doing some PR, you've also got some really nice links that point at your website. You've done SEO because you've done all the right stuff kind of by accident. What tends to happen is the opposite. People say, okay, we're going to SEO your website when we build it. And they don't really think about anything other than, like the technical stuff that you can go out and find out. We need page titles, meta descriptions, which isn't really SEO, but it attracts the click. H1 tags, H2 tags, H3 tags, and they think a little bit about it, but they don't really think about, okay, how do we, make the website faster and all of that kind of stuff. So I guess The real answer is, in my opinion, SEO is a mixture of disciplines, and one of them is technical. So it's about getting your website to run absolutely as fast as possible, to respond to queries and by a query I mean someone clicking on something on your website or arriving on a page, for that to run as quickly as possible and to be as user-friendly as possible. So it's, they recognize what it looks like and they're able to navigate around fairly easily. And then you've got the content on the site that needs to answer their questions. Doesn't need to be all about your company and how great you are at selling this thing that you sell. It needs to be all about how this person who's viewing your website can solve the problem or overcome the challenge that they've got by looking at the content on your website and maybe possibly having a conversation with you about your services or products. So you've got tech, you've got content, and then from a off-site point of view, you've kind of got digital PR, I'm going to call it. In the old days, we used to call it link authority, but the danger is when someone like me, who's got a background in SEO, says links, everybody thinks, oh yeah, I know that. You just go and buy some links. You don't go and buy any links. That's not what to do. And if anybody sells you any, that's not SEO. That is conning you. What you want is lots of trusted, authoritative websites to link back to yours, ideally in the same sector as you are. If you're starting out, that's quite hard. I know, Harry, you've been, what, 2 or 3 years in now, right? And it's quite hard. Who's going to link to me? I'm just Harry in my room, and I don't know what's going to become of this business. And thankfully, you've grown and you're marvelous. But it can be really hard to think about how that works. But bigger companies, it's easier for, because they can think, oh well, let's go and we'll put a big flag on the side of the tobacco factory in Bristol, or we'll make someone jump off the Clifton suspension bridge and their base jumping parachute could have our name on it, and that'll get you some mentions and get you some links, probably on the local press. All of that kind of stuff. A really good example of people who do that really well is worth going and looking at the case studies for Rise at 7. They do absolutely incredible digital PR, and they've changed the way that we all think about it. But what it does is it acquires you links from external websites that are trusted and authoritative, not spammy, shitty directories. Trusted, authoritative websites that link back to your page. Not always your homepage, might link back to different pages on your website. So tech, content, and link authority is
end of webinar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, although there are, if you go and look at any SEO website, there are days and years of content about each of those in minute detail.
So so we've got some like foundational areas to explore. Before we do talk about those, then when should we start worrying about SEO? So like for us, you mentioned we're almost 4 years old now. When should we have, or when should we be investing in SEO? And equally for other businesses, when's the right time to start, and how much priority should we be putting on SEO?
That's a good one. I think apart from on those rare occasions where you have got a product that nobody knows. So often we invent products or services that no one knows exist yet, right? And they might be something similar to someone else is doing, but we're doing them in a different way, or our products is slightly changed from the norm in the market. So those are kind of, you can do SEO around that because people know it exists and people know what challenges it solves. We've worked with other companies where SEO isn't a high priority because actually no one even knows there's a problem yet. So oddly enough, just before the pandemic, we were talking to a company that when you press the push thing on a door, it exudes a little bit of antibacterial and now antiviral as well, gel, like on doors all around offices, and they're trying to sell these doors because that's really cool. But no one knew that. No one's searching for anti-bac gel exuding door handle. So you have to be a bit more creative then and think, okay, well, what are the challenges they're going for? And so what's the challenge this is solving? And people are saying, well, it's making the world clean before you kind of walk into the office. Wow, no one gives a about that, and then the pandemic happened, and obviously they give a heck about it. But at the time they didn't. So if your product is so innovative and the challenge that it's solving is so unusual and so rare, then probably you need to do a bit more sort of brand awareness and product awareness and all of that kind of stuff that isn't SEO. But for the rest of the 99% of us, start doing SEO now if you haven't already started. If you're starting a new brand, think about what it's going to be called and how can we make that unique, and then how can we make it so that when we're talking about our brand, it's easily recognizable. Like as it's called Noisy Little Monkey, and when Noisy Little, no one else is associating the words Noisy Little Monkey and SEO or creative services or whatever together. So we've really made ourselves quite different, and it was a deliberate choice. And then you start to think about, well, what pages am I going to have on my website? And if you're thinking about that, or you're thinking, what are all these pages that I've got on my website? What's the point of them? They don't seem to get much traffic. Think about the user immediately, the person you're trying to flog to. And if you can do that and think, and a bit like you when you're developing apps, if you start with, oh, we're going to make a really cool app, 99% of the time doesn't really work. If you start with what's the benefit to the user for this app, or in our case, for this web page, what's the point of it? Is it helping them solve a problem? Is it helping them buy from us? Or is it doing something else? If it's doing something else, then it's probably not worth it. But that I consider to be SEO, because most people don't think about that when they're building a website. They think, I need a contact page, I need an about us page, I need a products page where we sell our products, and when I need a services page. Actually, what you've got to think about is what are the challenges people are typing into Google. They're going, how can I solve problem X, basically? If you've got a page that answers that question, you're going to get traffic, assuming that it's answering the question better than anybody else, and you've got a trusted website, and that is SEO. So I would say as early as possible. Of course, I've got a dog in the fight, so I'm bound to say as early as possible. But I ate my own dog food when we started this company. As soon as I'd built the website, which was crazy fast, this was way before Core Web Vitals, like it was 2006. 2008, excuse me. So it's before Core Web Vitals, but I just knew, well, Google likes fast sites, right? Okay, so my site's got to be fast, and people like fast sites, okay. And Google's always looking for a proxy of what people like. I'll build a super fast site. Right, I've got no one linking to me. Right, I'll go and solve some people's problems by going on forums where they talk about SEO and PPC and all of these things, and I'll just solve people's problems. And I must have done 100 posts a week on various forums. Eventually, I got signatures on them, like good ones as well, like the Moz forum and places like that, because I had been helpful and I hadn't been spammy. So I get a signature. In my signature, I've got a link back to my website, and suddenly I've got hundreds of links all over the internet pointing back at me, and I immediately saw a little boost in ranking. And then I started, involving myself in conversations with people I had really no right to involve myself with, like the head of search liaison at Google. I've got a link from Matt Cutz's blog. Now, you don't know who Matt Cutts is because he's not been in the game for decades. But at the time, it's like, whoa! So yeah, all of that stuff, like I ate my own dog food. You have to do the hard work. And if you're a founder in a startup, sometimes it's just about the founder in the startup thinking of like a user, and then thinking, how can I get people to show that they trust my website? And if you're not that, if you're a marketer, then and you've already got a website and you're not thinking about SEO, you need to change your attitude, because most of our clients, 80% of their new inquiries come via their blog. And if you don't have that sort of breakout, then you ain't doing SEO. You're playing around unless you have amazing products and services that are ranking at a site and all of your products and services convert. Most people's don't. So yeah, start early, start as soon as possible.
There we go. We all know what we're doing this afternoon then.
Yeah.
So I think, touched on a lot of interesting points there, but keywords, I guess, is something that you've started to sort of talk around there, in the sense of, okay, if you want to go out and start ranking for something, you need to pick some phrases and some search criteria to try and rank for. How do we go about working out what to rank for, and then picking the right keywords? Because some are more competitive than others, and it's difficult. I'm not sure if I've lost sound or we've lost you.
How about that? Is that better?
There we go. Yeah.
Sorry, I hit mute on myself. Not myself. I don't have a mute button. God, I bet everybody wishes I did. But I hit mute on the mic. So the best way to think about it is always start with what are the problems that my business, my services, or my products solve. We work in B2B, so I often come at it from a B2B perspective. Um, and once you've got that, think who do I solve that problem for? Who is my, I hate to go on about buyer personas, but buyer persona, or who's my target customer? What is that person? Because it's not everybody 8 to 80. There is a like I've always talk about it as like an archery target, and in the middle of that target you've got your 10 points gold. Who's that person? Because if you target that person, and we'll come on to how in a second, then it doesn't matter if you get 9 points, 8 points, 7 points, 6 points, because you're not, these people who you didn't quite target are still coming to your website and buying. That's great. That's fine. The people out on the point one, you don't really want them. You want to target the gold and hope that you get above 6 points. How do you think about that? Well, first off, you know what challenges and problems your product solves. Now you know the sort of people who are searching, who have that problem that you want to sell to, and then you can think, how do they ask Google how to solve this problem? What phrases do they use? Of course, that's quite difficult. And you said phrases rather than keywords, and I suggest that's how everybody thinks about it. Think about 2 or 3 or 4 words. Don't think about one keyword. Think about 2 or 3 or 4 words. Think about think about 17, 20 words. People type long ass inquiries into Google. So think about what are the sort of questions they're asking. Type them into Google. Type that question into Google, see what answers come up. What does Google already think is a good answer for that? And then see, do you think you can beat the sites that are there? If it's .gov, probably not. If it's your biggest competitor and they've got a marketing department of 50 and you've got a marketing department of you, probably not. But after a while, you'll start to get an idea of it. But then scroll down to the bottom of that Google search that you just did, and there'll be a load of suggestions at the bottom. People also searched for. Those people also searched for is a gold, because that is made up by Google using machine learning to go, oh, I've got a volume of searches for this phrase, and it seems to match this phrase. It feels like it's the next step. And if you keep going down those, what other people search for, you'll find some that you can win. And you'll find some that are relevant to you that you can win. And you just need to start creating content that exactly matches those phrases. So if the answer is, how do I build an app with no chief technical officer? Because that'll be a search. Or with how do I go about briefing an app building company? There'll be that'll exist. You need to write an article that answers that question, and it needs to answer it better than any other answer you can find on the internet. So that just means going and looking and seeing what do other people say. How do I answer better than that? And it's normally you answer more completely. But you write the answer, or you create the video with the answer on and transcribe the video. But you create that answer and you put it on your website, and then you give it a bit of share on social. That won't help you for SEO, but you've put this work in. May as well share it on LinkedIn, because you'll probably get some eyeballs from there, and people might see it, write about it, and link back to it. Great. Because if they're doing it on LinkedIn, doesn't matter. But if they're writing about it on their website, great. So that's where you want to start. One of the tools that can enable you to do that even better is a tool that we use a lot called Answer the Public. Which is exactly how you think it's spelled, answerthepublic.com. That will give you, I think, 5 free searches where it goes and scrapes Google for all of those related questions where people also search. It will give you some amazing topics that you can write on. So that's a really good way to go and find keywords. You can use tools like SEMrush, is another one that we use, where you put in like your seed search term, not keyword, search term, and it brings up a load of related ones, and it shows you how competitive they are and whether or not how difficult it would be to rank for them. Another thing that it does, which I really like, is it informs you about, or it tries to tell you what search intent is behind them. So most searches have like one of 4 intents, which would be informational, where they're just trying to sort of get answers to questions, and then navigational, where, so let's say one of my questions might be, who's the best SEO agency in Bristol? That's an informational one, right? Your natural next search would be a navigational one, because the answer is definitely Noisy Little Monkey. You don't have to Google it, guys. Google might even give you different answers. It definitely will. But you might then Google Noisy Little Monkey. That's a navigational intent. It's searching for a brand. And then you've got transactional intent. How much does SEO cost? How much does Noisy Little Monkey cost? Those are transactional. And then finally would be Noisy Little Monkey versus Cool Bison SEO. They come up all the time when you search for Bristol SEO. I don't even think they're in Bristol. Maybe they are. If you're on the call, sorry lads. I've never met you. But you know, you do those searches and you're like that. These people aren't here, are they? But yeah, that's like a commercial one where it's trying to go, right, well, I'm at the point where I'm picking an agency and it's this one or this one. And it's people looking for those things. People looking for that answer, and you can put that on your own website. So if you are Dave's Sock Emporium and people also buy socks from Steve's Hot UK Socks, when they go Dave's Sock Emporium versus Steve's Hot UK Socks, if you've got the answer to that question, why buy from us? Why buy from Steve's Hot UK Socks? Because probably not everybody's right for you. If you have those answers to your question on your website on one page, you'll probably outrank Steve's UK Socks for that question, and you'll get more business as a result.
Easy as that.
Yeah, easy as that. It's none of this is easy. You've just got to do a lot of typing.
Yeah. So this is a really, really interesting one. So once you've kind of worked out the kind of things that people are searching for, and you're then going to put that content on your website.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do a lot of is UX design. So it's trying to design pages, and particularly in an e-commerce kind of space where you're doing a product page, for example. Often there seems to be this kind of like perceived trade-off between SEO and UX. So UX fighting for simplicity and maybe less content, less is more, and SEO sometimes being perceived as kind of, we need to get all the keywords in.
Yeah, all the words must be on this page.
Or, yeah. Do you have a view on that? How do you play that to the right level of kind of achieving both objectives?
So with clients, we test. So we'll have one person at the client or one team at the client saying, we need more words on the page because it's important for Google and it must be above all of the product pictures. And then we'll have the conversions team or the commercial team or the UX team or all three of them going, no, that's a terrible idea. And so what we do is just test and see, okay, let's say we get, double traffic, but we quarter our conversions. Oh, okay. Commercially, that makes no sense. But if we get double traffic and our conversions only drops by 2%, sorry, UX guys, we're having more words. Which is easy when you've got clients who we can do that with. Those tests take 3-6 months. It's not like it's going to happen. It's not like you can do it quickly. So more often than not, we tend to go with our gut and go, look, we could test it, or we could just say, anecdotally, if you provide a terrible user experience, as in you've got paragraphs of text before your products, you're not going to sell many products, and the amount of extra traffic you'll get is not going to be enough to continue to pay for your business to keep running. So that's kind of thing one is if it looks daft to the average viewer, and by the average viewer I mean not anybody in the SEO team and not anybody in the UX team and not anybody who works for the business, go to McDonald's, stand there with your laptop, buy someone their lunch and say, hey, I sell widgets. This is my page that sells widgets. I'll buy you a burger if you tell me what you think of this page. They eat their burger, they probably spill some mayonnaise on your keyboard, but you get 3 or 4 people giving you genuine feedback when they don't know who the hell you are, rather than all of us with a dog in the fight. What was I going to say? The other thing is, it isn't really a trade-off between UX and SEO because we're all fighting the same battle. We're all trying to make more money than the competitor because it's a zero-sum game. There's only so much money in the world. And you want some of it that people are spending on washing machines if you sell washing machines, and AO is going to want that same dollar. And actually, people who sell laundry services also want that money. And people who provide executive cleaning services also want that money because they'll take your washing with them. So we're all competing for that same dollar. So it's a zero-sum game. You have to outrank them or you have to outperform them. And that means that if you really screw up the UX because you've gone for SEO, you're going out of business. So I would normally say, if you can sit down, have a conversation and go, right, well, where's the compromise that we believe? Get 2 or 3 people to have a look at it. And also you can use various of those online testing things and get people to run through those. You normally, common sense is the right way to answer that question. And Google ranks stuff that has good UX over stuff that doesn't have good UX most of the time. It's not that's an algorithmic thing, but if a page has terrible performance from a user perspective, it doesn't rank very well normally. So you've got to find the middle ground, and it's normally a conversation rather than lots of testing.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's about making sure everyone's aligned around the same objective, isn't it? And that's the real battle almost. And once you're all pulling in the same direction, it's it becomes a lot easier.
As soon as you're all pulling in the same direction, you all do lots of different things that you weren't thinking you were going to do, and it's like little changes to what you were going to do to build that compromise, and everybody go after the same goal.
Yeah, fantastic. I've probably got time for one last question from me, but if you've got any questions, drop them either in the chat or the Q&A, whichever you prefer. Just make sure if it's in the chat that it goes to everyone as opposed to just the panelists, so that we can all see the question and we will get through them. But the last kind of question from me, at least, is you mentioned testing, and that's quite interesting. And I suppose, is SEO a kind of one and done game? Like, if we set all our keywords out, set it up, is that it? Or where do you actually take it from there in terms of continuing to improve it?
I used to say to people, but it'd be often misinterpreted, but I'm saying it again, it's kind of one and done, mate. You know what? If you get it right, and like if on a new website, let's say you're building a new website and you build it as search engine friendly as possible, and you create a content plan for the next 24 months of the content you're going to put out, and you stick to that plan, you don't need to keep hiring an SEO agency to make it better. Unless you're hiring them to do digital PR, or unless you're hiring them to produce amazing content, or unless you're hiring them to just check your website's hygienically okay and therefore isn't putting up any barriers to Google. The trouble is, people tend to then think, oh, well, I've done SEO when I launched the website, I don't need to do anything else. I've got Steve, our head of SEO, often says having the plan isn't actually getting the work done. And that's what happens, is people go, oh, I've got a content plan, and then no, you've got to sit there and you've got to write the content every month. You've got to grind out some more content. It tends not to be a one and done thing. The foundational side of things tends to be, do it every 2 or 3 years. You don't need to just keep doing the same foundational stuff in terms of the way the website's built and all of that kind of stuff. Hopefully you got it right first time. Check it, it's not broken. That's all you need to do. If it breaks, fix it. But yeah, the content and the digital PR side of things, that is something that you need to just keep going. Unless you're in the lucky position that no one else in your industry is doing that. And I've not come across anybody with that useful thing yet.
Probably in the wrong industry if that is the case.
Yeah, exactly. You can't be selling anything that anybody needs. But yeah.
Fantastic. Right, we've got some questions coming through from some anonymous attendees. So the first one, hi John. Actually, I need to press the button. Here we go. So hi John, great insight. For someone starting out with SEO but without much resource or budget, what would you say are the top priorities to check off to start ranking on search engines?
Oh, nice. Good question. Starting out with SEO. So if you're starting out, I would say, and particularly if you've got no budget, you need to go and get some, or you need to train yourself somewhere trusted, because it's such a huge topic, and there are so many different ways that you can impact the website you're working on. But also, if you're just starting out, you can change the course of your career, because you might want to really do this rather than this bit of SEO. So I would say looking at the Moz Beginner's Guide to SEO, that's really good. Not everything. So the other thing you need to do if you're starting out in SEO, if you're ever talking to anybody about SEO, is dial your bullshit meter up to sensor up to 10, because so many of us are full of shit. So you've really got to go careful. And Moz is a good place, but there are still people on it in the forums who are trying to game the system and trying to catch you out so that you employ them for hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds per month or per year. And they just don't do anything. So dial your bullshit meter up to 11. Go and look at the Moz Beginner's Guide to SEO. I think I've put that in the notes for you guys to share. I'd also, if you're from a practical point of view, just to start doing stuff, make sure that you've got access to Google Search Console and Bing Web Tools or Microsoft Web Tools. Submit your sitemap, which is a file that ends in XML, sitemap.xml. Submit that to both of those, so because that's what they request. And also make sure that you've got a robots file, robots.txt at the end of your domain name, /robots.txt, that indicates where that sitemap is. If you do those two things, what will happen is, it's not going to change your ranking probably, but what will happen is you'll be able to log into both of those tools, Google Search Console and Microsoft Web Tools, forgot the name, Microsoft, anyway, who cares? And they'll be able to tell you where the errors are on your website, where the indexing problems are and all of that kind of stuff. You'll get loads of graphs. You're going to need to go and watch a load of videos on YouTube on how to interpret those graphs and fix the errors that are found. But you might see stuff like, well, I've got 1,000 pages on my website and Google's only indexing 50 of them and it's only found 50. And then you can start to go and solve problems. And that's really what technical SEO is about, at least, is solving problems and making things better. That's where I'd start. Oh, and follow Carrie Rose on Twitter for digital PR.
And Jon Payne as well, of course.
Yeah, I'm not as good as Carrie Rose as a follow, frankly.
Good dog content, though.
Great. Yeah, Carrie has got no dog content like I've got.
Fantastic. Cool. Next one. How do we go about increasing our domain authority, and is that important?
How do we go about increasing our domain authority? Yes, probably is important. So you go about increasing your domain authority by acquiring more links to your domain or your website from trusted authoritative sources. So one of the tools I would use to assess your website versus your competitor websites is something called Majestic SEO. There are other tools. These are just ones that I'm used to using. So I don't have an axe to grind commercially here. I just like this one. And you can put in your domain versus other competitor domains and see who's got the most domain authority or the most trusted domain. You can also see who links to your competitors, and you can start to put together a plan on how you can get links from similar websites. So if the BBC link to your competitors but they don't link to you, what are they doing that's newsworthy that you aren't? Because you really need to up your game. Now, it's unlikely to be the BBC, but there will be other places and trade magazines and stuff like that, which would be an interesting place to start. And those will be shown to you by Majestic. If you can't afford Majestic, it's free to begin with, so you can do some interesting stuff just as a start, and then you could pay more money. The other thing you could do is make sure you're a member of your local Chamber of Commerce. They'll almost certainly have a directory that you can join. And Google knows that you have to pay to be a Chamber of Commerce member, so this isn't some knockoff crappy directory. Do something newsworthy. Get in the news with your brand. Get new mentions about your brand, because actually it might, even if they don't mention your domain, people will hear about you. And your SEO that didn't work out for SEO worked out for PR. So yeah, those are kind of beginner ways to get started. And if you've got a PR agency, go and do some research around digital PR. Again, so There's 10 Yetis who are in Gloucestershire. They're really useful to go. He's the OG of digital PR, Andy. Go and have a look at his blog, see how they do it. Go and have a look at Rise at Seven's blog, see how they do it, and just see how can I go and pick and choose things that they do with my little budget and my boss. How can I get some of this done? It will give you some inspiration, hopefully.
Fantastic. Brilliant stuff. I've got 2 more questions left
Cool.
for you, John. How important is image tagging for SEO?
Image tagging.
Like alt tags.
Yeah, alt tags. Okay.
I'm guessing I've added that myself. So
yeah, that's what I'm hoping it is. You know what? Even if it's not useful for SEO, do it because it's useful for people who can't see. Anybody with poor eyesight or who is blind needs image tags to know what your images are. Rant over. Genuinely, just fucking do it.
there we go.
But from an SEO perspective, okay, it's lost me thousands of pounds over the last 10, 15 years. When I've said to people, none of your images have useful alt text. So it can't just be you can't spam it with keywords. You need to describe the image on the page. So ideally, let's say you sell phone covers and on your page, you've got a thing about the top 10 phone covers. A picture of this phone cover would be blue cover for OnePlus Nord. That's what that is. 5G, OnePlus Nord 5G. Also OnePlus phones. Lovely. Or turquoise phone cover, perhaps, for OnePlus 5G. If that's the alt text for that image and the page is about phone covers, when people search for phone cover for OnePlus 5G, or particularly turquoise phone cover for OnePlus Nord 5G, your image is likely to come up in the image search. If they click on it, they'll come to your website. So, and when I tell people that and they go, oh, well, we'll do that and then we'll talk to you about SEO, and then they phone me up and they go, we don't need your SEO, we're ranking out of sight. And genuinely, I've had people phone up and say, we did it at the weekend, we're absolutely smashing it on Monday, we don't need any help. So it's super important, but it's more important to make the web a more accessible, better place for human beings.
Fantastic answer. Yeah, love it. We've got, someone's added one more, so I'm going to sneak them in.
Okay.
When Google Keyword Researcher says a keyword phrase has 0 to 10 inquiries per month, are those keywords even worth targeting at all? Or should you always aim for the 10 to 100 bracket?
Oh, that's a really good shout. It depends. If you're not ranking for anything that's got lots of traffic, target the ones with 1 to 10, and also, or 0 to 10, because often it's more than 10. But what the alternative I would say to anonymous attendee is that keyword, that keyword or key phrase that you're trying to target, go and splat that into answer the public, or just go and stick it into Google and see what the recommended searches were and get above the problem. So if it's quite competitive but quite low volume, there'll be questions that are more how, why, what, where, when ways than just simply typing in those 2 or 3 words. People will be asking questions. So get above the problem. What's the search they do before they search for those 2 or 3 words? Think about that, create that content, do it with organic SEO. Probably might even get some decent paid if you wanted to do it, but actually they're not ready to convert yet. If it's a question phrase, that's often an informational rather than commercial or transactional. So I always try and get above the problem. If there's low volume, think about, okay, well, let's go for something a bit more high volume, but let's broaden it out a bit, because we're not going to compete with all of the big nationals for those sort of high volume, high intent phrases.
Yeah, brilliant.
I hope that answers the question. By the way, I'm on Twitter or email or noisyllittlemonkey.com. If I haven't answered your question, you've got one, just come to us in some way and we'll answer it.
Yeah, and we'll also be sending around all the links that John has been very kindly sharing. So make sure that everyone has got access to those. We're going to do one last question because we've got it here, and then we'll call time. But the last one is, hi, John, do you have any advice for ranking for local SEO terms?
Oh man, 5 years ago I'd have killed this, but right now not so much. I would go and check out the blogs at Bright Local. I would go and find Claire Carlisle on Twitter and read their output. I've got some ideas, but they're 5 years old, and that's way old in SEO land. So yeah, go and check out Bright Local. Check out Moz Local. That's good. And check out Claire Carlisle. Oh, and Greg Gifford on Twitter. They're always sharing great stuff. That would be. I'd give that. I wish I had an answer, but I don't. That's the best answer.
That's fantastic. Jon, look, thank you so much for sharing some time with us this afternoon and talking all about SEO. It's been really insightful. So thanks for coming along.
Oh man, thanks for having me. It's been great.
No worries at all. For everyone else, we'll be back here next month at same time, and we will be talking to Ash Phillips, who is the founder of Different, or was previously called Yenna. He's built a fantastic community of entrepreneurs, and we're going to be talking about community building, which is really hot topic in marketing at the moment. So hopefully you can join us then. But yeah, thanks so much for coming along today. Thanks to Jon, and we will catch you next time.
See ya.
Bye.